In the shadow of jagged mountains, where fog drapes the earth like a shroud, lies a village forgotten by time. A place where silence is thicker than the air itself, and even the wind seems hesitant to move. The village is called Dravik, and it carries a legend darker than the surrounding wilderness. It begins quietly, almost imperceptibly. At first, a few villagers notice that their neighbours' eyes appear different. Dull, clouded, lacking the lively reflection of life. Then, a mother realizes her son's pupils are gone, vanished entirely. Only empty, dark orbs remain. Panic spreads faster than any virus. Families huddle indoors, doors bolted, windows shuttered, yet the epidemic advances regardless. Medical experts arrive, baffled. Their equipment registers nothing abnormal. No pathogen, no toxin, no trace of radiation. Yet the phenomenon persists. The tension is palpable as desperation sets in. Children are the first to be taken. Elders vanish next. By the end of the second week, nearly half the village stares back at the outside world with hollow eyes. The atmosphere becomes surreal. Those remaining alive whisper among themselves, fearful of what might happen if they sleep. In the streets, a silence replaces the usual clamour of daily life. No laughter, no animal sounds. Even the wind seems to bend around the village in muted respect, or perhaps dread. An unsettling pattern emerges. Villagers report strange sightings at night, figures in the periphery of their vision, moving silently. Shadows that stretch unnaturally long and dissolve into nothingness. A low hum that seems to emanate from the very ground, pulsing like a heartbeat. Local folklore provides a chilling explanation. An ancient tale speaks of a spirit known as the eyeless harvester, a being that collects sight itself. It is said to prey on communities bound by isolation, seeking the eyes of the living to fuel its eternal presence. The villagers recall warnings passed down from their ancestors, legends of families struck blind, never to regain their gaze, leaving them hollow and vacant, wandering like shadows. Modern science dismisses such claims, attributing the phenomenon to psychological contagion, mass hysteria, or an unidentified pathogen. Yet, the evidence resists rational explanation. Cameras placed in the village at night capture glimpses of movement that defy physics. Shadows move independently of any known source. CCTV footage shows doorways open and close on their own. Infrared sensors detect cold presences where no one stands. The twist emerges when a visiting anthropologist, Dr. Helena Kovic, uncovers the ancient shrine at the edge of the village. Hidden beneath layers of moss and soil, the shrine contains carvings of faceless figures, their empty sockets carved deep and precise. At the centre lies a small obsidian altar, black as midnight, smooth and cold to the touch. When Dr. Kovic examines it under moonlight, a faint pattern emerges. It is a series of concentric symbols, almost like an eye without a pupil radiating outward. She notes in her journal, "The alignment of the carvings suggests an intentional ritual. It is as though the entire village layout is mapped in service of this object. A conduit for the harvesting of sight." Nightfall brings confirmation. As the wind picks up and the fog thickens, those who still have their pupils notice shadows gathering near the shrine. A soft, whispering chant seems to emanate from the stones, inaudible yet understood. And then, suddenly, more villagers awaken to find their pupils gone. The payoff is terrifying in its simplicity. This is no disease in the conventional sense. No illness confined to biology. It is a malevolent force, ancient and calculating, harvesting human essence in a manner science cannot quantify. By the third week, Dravik is a village of hollow-eyed figures. Some wander silently in the streets, others huddle inside their homes. Visitors are warned to leave immediately, but a sense of dread follows all who approach. the resolution leaves the mind lingering in unease. Dreivik stands, quiet and seemingly abandoned, yet it is far from lifeless. Those who venture near report glimpses of the hollow-eyed villagers at dusk, staring blankly. Their gaze is unnerving, as though the empty sockets are windows to something else entirely. A place beyond the human spectrum, where perception itself is consumed. Some say the eyeless harvester continues to grow stronger with each passing year, expanding its influence across the surrounding lands. The final image is haunting. A village frozen in silence, the streets empty yet watched, the wind whispering through vacant eyes. No scream escapes. No tears fall. Only the hollow gaze remains, an eternal reminder of what lurks beyond understanding, waiting patiently for the next eyes to claim. Dreivik is a mirror of the unknown, a testament to the fragility of perception itself. And in that mirror, the world outside catches a reflection of fear, subtle yet undeniable. The village stares back, empty-eyed, and the silence speaks louder than any word ever. The air was thick with dampness, each breath tasting of ancient stone and forgotten sorrow. Deep within the ruins of Serath's keep, an architectural aberration defies all reason, a staircase that seems to stretch beyond comprehension. Locals in the nearby village of Black Hollow speak of it only in hushed whispers. They call it the Endless Staircase. Its existence was first recorded in the late 1500s, when the keep still stood in its full, imposing glory. Constructed by Lord Darian Serath, an ambitious and secretive nobleman obsessed with arcane knowledge, the staircase was said to be the centerpiece of the keep's grandest experiment. Legend tells that Darian Serath sought to construct a passageway that transcended time and space, a spiral of stone that led not just up or down, but inward. The first documented account comes from Sir Alistair Hammond, an explorer who visited the keep in 1598. He wrote, "What began as an ordinary descent soon became unnatural. With each step downward, the light dimmed. Minutes became hours, hours became days, and the architecture seemed to stretch on endlessly. The walls themselves whispered, though no sound should exist." The tension of the story builds as more reports emerged through the centuries. In 1721, an expedition led by Father Benedict Morrow attempted to map the staircase. Their journal reveals a growing desperation. "We have walked for what seems an eternity. The walls shift, the carvings rearrange. Each step does not bring us closer to the bottom, but further from the surface. I feel as though we are being pulled into something beyond time itself." The most chilling twist emerged when scholars began to study the intricate carvings that lined the walls. At first, they appeared to be ornamental patterns, swirling arabesques and geometric flourishes. But upon closer examination, the carvings revealed something far more disturbing. They depicted scenes of sorrowful faces, twisted in agony, eternally trapped in the stone. An archaic script, unreadable by most, was etched alongside each figure. One cryptographer, Dr. Samuel Graves, spent years trying to decode the script in the early 1900s. His final paper, written in trembling hand, concluded, "These carvings, they are not mere decoration. They suggest the staircase was constructed as a trap, a prison for souls. Each step is a thread that binds those who traverse it, drawing them deeper into the unknown. The payoff lies in the testimonies of those few who survived the descent." Marguerite Leclerc, a 19th century explorer, is said to be the last known person to emerge from the staircase. Her story is haunting. She claimed to have been part of an expedition in 1845, determined to reach the staircase's end. Her account reads, "We descended in high spirits, eager to solve the mystery. But soon, the atmosphere turned heavy, oppressive. No matter how many steps we took, the staircase stretched beyond sight. I lost my companions one by one, each vanishing into shadow, as if consumed by the very stone. When Marguerite emerged, alone and gaunt, she refused to speak further of what transpired. Her eyes, hollow and distant, told of horrors unspeakable. Modern investigations, though limited, have confirmed the strange properties of the staircase. Thermal imaging reveals no end. Sensors indicate the absence of traditional spatial dimensions. Volumetric scans suggest that the architecture does not adhere to normal geometry. Measurements shift from step to step. Distances expand without reason. Some speculate the staircase is not linear at all, that it folds space, that each step taken is not forward or backward, but deeper into something unseen. In 2008, a documentary filmmaker, Aaron Caldwell, attempted to explore the staircase with cutting-edge equipment. What he recorded was both mundane and surreal. The video shows him stepping carefully downward. His voice remains steady at first, but as the descent continues, his tone shifts. From curiosity to doubt to sheer terror. At one point, his camera captures a fleeting image. A shadow moves along the wall, not cast by any light source, but distinct. A silhouette of a figure standing still, as though observing. His last transmission cut off abruptly. No trace of Caldwell was ever found. The resolution remains hauntingly ambiguous. Some believe the staircase is a pathway, leading somewhere transcendent, perhaps a dimension outside time itself. Others argue it is a prison, an eternal snare for those foolish enough to tread its steps. What is known is this: every step fades into darkness. Every descent becomes a surrender, and every ascent is impossible. For those who attempt to climb back are said to vanish into thin air. Their last words, if recorded, speak only of whispers, of voices echoing from within the stone walls, of shadows that shift against the light, of a presence watching, waiting. The endless staircase of Sarath's keep holds its secret, neither beginning nor end, neither exit nor entrance, only infinite steps, a spiral into the unknown, a descent into oblivion, and, as the storms rage around the forsaken keep, the staircase continues, growing, shifting, eternal, each step fading into dark. In the dim light of candle flicker and dust-choked air, few things evoke the weight of mystery as profoundly as a portrait. A painting immortalized on canvas serves as a silent observer of the ages. But what if the painted eyes weren't frozen in time? What if they moved, aged, and lived? Such is the chilling tale of the time-lost portrait of Lady Evangeline. The story begins in the late 18th century, when a renowned artist named Benedict Mortimer was commissioned to paint the portrait of Lady Evangeline Ashworth, a noblewoman of considerable beauty and enigmatic lineage. Evangeline was known throughout the English countryside for her ethereal presence. Her eyes, described by witnesses as deep pools of sorrow, seemed to look beyond the living, as though perceiving truths unseen by others. The portrait was completed in 1783. At first glance, it seemed a masterpiece of artistry. The brushwork captured Lady Evangeline in mid-pose, her porcelain skin flawless, her expression both melancholic and serene. Yet those who beheld the painting noted something strange. With each passing week, the subject appeared to age. At first, the change was subtle, a faint line near the eye, a slight droop of the mouth. But over time, the difference became undeniable. Local gentry who visited Ashworth Hall, the ancestral home where the portrait hung in the Great Hall, remarked that Evangeline's depiction did not remain static, as was customary for portraits of the time. Her skin gradually grew paler. Her eyes, once vibrant, became dim and hollow. Her youthful visage began to resemble that of a woman far older. The tension deepened as Lord Ashworth, Evangeline's husband, grew increasingly disturbed. He kept the portrait locked in a private chamber, refusing to let visitors near. A diary entry from 1791 reads, "It is as though the painting feeds upon her life. Each time I gaze upon it, I see her suffer further. Her beauty fades before my very eyes." By 1803, Lady Evangeline herself vanished. Some claim she died of unknown illness. Others whisper darker stories that she was consumed by the very portrait intended to immortalize her. The twist emerged decades later, in 1922, when the last descendant of the Ashworth family, Jonathan Ashworth, sought to rediscover the portrait after the estate fell into ruin. What he found defied all logic. The canvas hung in near-perfect preservation, despite the decay of the manor. And yet, Lady Evangeline's face had aged beyond recognition. Wrinkles marked her once flawless skin. Her eyes, deep-set and glassy, appeared to follow Jonathan as he moved around the room. He recounted in a personal journal, "Her gaze met mine with such intensity I felt exposed, as though the eyes of the portrait saw into my soul." Jonathan's experience was not unique. Every subsequent owner or visitor of the portrait reported a similar sensation, a pervasive feeling that the painted Lady Evangeline was alive. One curious collector, Dr. Eleanor Whitaker, acquired the portrait in 1957. Her scientific approach led to an experiment that proved even more disturbing. She carefully photographed the painting daily, under identical lighting conditions. The images showed a steady progression of aging. What began as the youthful face of a noblewoman became something unrecognizable. A gaunt figure, the eyes hollow, the skin sagging. Further still, the eyes themselves seemed to shift orientation between photos. In some images, Lady Evangeline's gaze was aimed directly at the camera lens. In others, slightly to the left, then right, matching the movement of the photographer. Dr. Whitaker documented this in her report. The subject of the portrait does not remain static. There is evidence that the eyes, at minimum, are responsive to external stimuli. But whether this is a photographic illusion or something far darker remains undetermined. The phenomenon's payoff lies in chilling personal accounts. Margaret Hollis, a librarian who visited the portrait in 1984, described it in detail. "At first, I thought my mind played tricks on me, but the eyes, they followed me. I could feel their weight, pressing, judging. Even now, I cannot forget the way they seemed alive." Similarly, a private investigator named Thomas Graves reported that after staring into the eyes for several minutes, he began experiencing vivid nightmares of decay, darkness, and disembodied voices whispering unintelligible words. Some theories suggest that the time-lost portrait of Lady Evangeline is a prison, a vessel designed to trap her soul, an experiment in necromantic or arcane arts gone awry. Others believe it is a curse, a mechanism set in place to slowly siphon the life force of its subject, preserving their image at the expense of their living essence. Perhaps most unsettling of all, a handful of accounts describe an almost hypnotic compulsion. Visitors who gazed too long into the eyes found themselves unable to look away. Some reported feeling their own features begin to shift in reflections. Others began hearing faint laughter in the dark. Attempts to remove the portrait or destroy it have consistently failed. The canvas, bound in leather and framed with dark mahogany, appears indestructible. Knives shatter upon contact. Fire leaves no mark. One particularly chilling entry comes from an anonymous owner in 1973. "I tried to burn it. The flames leapt away from the canvas. Instead, I felt as though the eyes themselves were laughing at me." The resolution of the mystery remains unresolved. To this day, the time-lost portrait of Lady Evangeline resides in a private collection far from public knowledge. Scholars refuse to examine it. Museums decline its display. Collectors speak of it only in hushed tones. Yet, regardless of where it is kept or who holds it, the eyes continue to age. They follow, they observe, and they wait. The curse, or prison, or sentient presence, is eternal. Each new gaze deepens the bond. Each curious glance turns the page forward in time. Lady Evangeline's face continues to age, her expression becoming more hollow, more desolate, more unknowable. The question lingers. What is the source of this phenomenon? Was it a tragedy turned artifact? An experiment of forbidden knowledge? Or a relic created by an ancient power that defies reason? The answer remains lost. The eyes never stop watching, forever trapped in time. The time-lost portrait of Lady Evangeline endures as a silent, unblinking testament to the unknowable, to the inevitable passage of time, and to the inescapable weight of the gaze. There are places where silence reigns eternal, places where time seems to fold in on itself, places that do not belong to the living. One such place is Ravensmoor Manor. Perched atop a windswept hill in the desolate moors of northern England, the manor stands as a testament to forgotten grandeur. Its once stately facade now crumbles beneath ivy and years of relentless storms. Locals know it only in whispers. The manor is said to awaken only on stormy nights. On such nights, when lightning flashes across an obsidian sky and rain lashes the earth like liquid knives, something inexplicable occurs. A sound emerges from deep within the decaying walls, a full orchestra, playing as though a grand ball were in full swing. The first recorded account of this phenomenon dates back to 1748. An itinerant scholar named Edmund Crowther, fascinated by tales of the supernatural, documented the experience in his personal journal. The thunder roared like the voice of the gods, and the manor itself seemed to pulse in response. From within the desolation, I heard violins, cellos, brass instruments, and an organ, as though a grand performance were underway. Yet when I dared approach the windows, no light shone within. The tension surrounding Ravensmoor deepened as more accounts trickled in over the centuries. Farmers spoke of livestock refusing to graze near the manor on stormy nights. Travellers, passing the hill, swore their compasses spun wildly, and the temperature dropped to unnatural lows. The manor's history is steeped in tragedy. Constructed in the early 1600s by the enigmatic Lord Albrecht Ravensmoor, the estate was reputed for extravagant music gatherings. An avid patron of the arts, Lord Ravensmoor employed the finest musicians across Europe, hosting lavish concerts attended by nobility. But all came to a gruesome halt in 1665. On the night of the grandest performance the manor had ever known, the entire orchestra vanished. No survivors, no remains. The official report cited an unexplained catastrophe, but no further explanation was ever documented. Whispers of occult practices and forbidden experiments began to swirl. In the modern era, curiosity and skepticism collided in 1994 when a team of paranormal investigators, led by Professor Adrian Blake, arrived at Ravensmoor Manor. Their goal, to capture and analyse the Phantom Orchestra. Equipped with high-sensitivity microphones, thermal imaging cameras, electromagnetic field detectors, and vibration sensors, they waited for the storm. As night fell and the heavens opened, the phenomenon began. From deep within the manor, the faint hum of strings grew louder. The violin soared melancholic and sharp. The cello resonated in deep, sombre tones. Brass instruments punctuated the air like distant thunder. though no physical source could be identified. Professor Blake's team activated every piece of recording equipment at their disposal. The tension was palpable as the orchestra seemed to envelop them. Each member of the team reported chills running down their spines. One researcher, Helen Carrington, described the sensation as being watched by invisible eyes, though no one else corroborated seeing any presence. The twist occurred when the team analyzed the audio recordings. Playback revealed a disturbing anomaly. The frequencies were clean of distortion, with no background noise, yet no trace of human fingerprints could be detected. No vocal timbre, no individual instrument markers, only perfect, harmonious sound. Even stranger, the EMF detectors registered faint, structured patterns, almost like a Morse code, interwoven beneath the music. When analyzed further, these signals seemed unrelated to any known human technology. Some theorists argue that the phantom orchestra of Ravensmoor Manor is not music at all, but a form of communication, a message wrapped in melody, an attempt to reach the living from beyond. One of the most chilling moments occurred when Professor Blake himself began to transcribe the music by hand. Notes that seemed to arrange themselves into something else, an unintelligible code. A pattern began to emerge, fractured phrases in Latin, Old Norse, and archaic Celtic languages. One particularly disturbing passage read, "And the pact shall be played, the lost souls compelled, forever to echo their despair." The payoff now becomes a haunting speculation. Could the orchestra be an echo of the tragedy that unfolded centuries ago? An eternal replay of the cursed night in 1665? Or something far darker? The theory of sentient resonance began to take hold. That the manor, bound by grief and ancient rites, had somehow absorbed the souls of the musicians. That the instruments themselves were conduits, channels through which the lost orchestra performed, unaware of their own demise. In the years that followed, many who attempted to spend the night in Ravensmoor Manor vanished without a trace. One such case involved Robert Hayes, a paranormal journalist, in 2003. His last known communication was a grainy, terrified video recording in which he whispered, "It knows me. I can hear them. The music, it's alive." The manor itself remains impenetrable to investigation. Efforts to physically enter the rooms where the music originates result in nothing but silence. No instruments. No traces of sound-producing objects. Cameras pick up only empty air. Temperature readings plummet. Thermal imagery reveals nothing but cold stone walls. Yet, every time a storm approaches, the orchestra returns. The resolution lies in silence. Some believe the phenomenon is a curse, a punishment for the sins of Lord Albrecht Ravensmoor. Others argue it is a warning, a haunting reminder that some tragedies are meant to remain undisturbed. The phantom orchestra of Ravensmoor Manor plays on, neither fully alive nor dead, neither past nor present, neither natural nor supernatural. A melody without beginning and without end, an eternal requiem trapped within the walls of a forgotten manor, a place where the storm sings and the manor waits, silent, empty, haunted, until the next thunder cracks, until the next lightning reveals its unseen audience, until the next soul dares to. Beneath the gnarled roots of time, in the heart of a landscape draped with shadow, stands the crumbling ruin of Eldwyn Keep. Once a fortress of noble power, its stone walls now sag under centuries of neglect. Moss covers every surface, and wind whispers between broken battlements, carrying tales of despair and mystery. It is here, within the cold and hollow remains of Eldwyn Keep, that a singular object sits in quiet infamy. A manuscript unlike any other. Known as the Cursed Manuscript of Eldwyn, the book is small, ancient, and bound in leather so dark that it seems to swallow light. Its cover is featureless, except for a faint, worn symbol embossed at the center, an interwoven knot of shapes no historian has been able to identify. The legend begins in the late 1600s, when the manuscript first surfaced in the possession of Lord Alastair Harrow, the last known lord of Eldwyn Keep. According to fragmented records, Harrow was an avid collector of rare texts and artifacts. Yet the arrival of the cursed manuscript marked the beginning of his tragic descent into madness. One entry in a surviving ledger reads, "On the third moon of winter, the book was delivered by a stranger, cloaked and silent. No signature accompanied it. Its pages were said to be blank, yet Harrow began to read and act." That phrase, "and act," would come to define the inexplicable nature of the book. At first, it seemed harmless. Lord Harrow would spend hours in his study, murmuring aloud, the candlelight flickering as shadows seemed to bend toward him. But soon, his behavior changed. He began reenacting scenes from the book in disturbing detail, walking the halls of Eldwyn Keep as though trapped in a trance, whispering lines of text that others could not hear, disappearing for days on end, only to return with a hollow stare. The tension deepened when Lord Harrow vanished entirely. On a night when a storm raged across the land, his chambers were found in disarray, the manuscript lying open upon his desk. Yet, remarkably, the pages appeared blank. Generations passed, and the manuscript's existence drifted into legend. Few believed it real. But in 1985, the scholar Dr. Evelyn Moreau, specializing in ancient occult texts, acquired the manuscript through a private auction. Her first attempt to study it was methodical and cautious. She set up ultraviolet and infrared scanners, chemical reagents, and specialized lighting. Still, nothing appeared. Days turned into weeks. The manuscript remained frustratingly blank. It was only during a night of full moon, when the chamber was bathed in pale light, that the truth began to reveal itself. Under the glow of moonlight, faint letters began to emerge across the pages, characters written in ink, seemingly invisible by day. They appeared slowly, as though summoned by lunar energy. Dr. Moreau wrote in her journal, "The text does not reveal itself under artificial light. Only under the natural ancient light of the moon does it whisper its secrets." The words described a series of seemingly mundane events at first. A man wandering a forest, a child discovering a hidden well, a woman lighting a lantern. But, as the researcher read further, the text began to grow darker. The descriptions shifted from passive observation to direct command. He walks until he cannot see. She listens, though the sound does not reach her ears. They cannot turn back now. Driven by scholarly curiosity, Dr. Moreau recorded each sentence meticulously, taking care to document the order in which they appeared. Then, without warning, the manuscript began to shift again. The words rearranged themselves. Entire passages rewritten, as if responding to her reading. An entry that was once, "The child finds a key beneath the well," became, "You must find the key beneath the well." The twist became undeniable. The book was no passive object. It seemed alive. Compelled by a force beyond comprehension, Dr. Moreau found herself reading the words aloud involuntarily. At first, she believed it a psychological effect, suggestion, paranoia. But within days, strange events began to unfold. Her assistant, Thomas Keller, disappeared. His last known words, recorded in a trembling phone message, "I think the book is calling me." Neighbours reported hearing faint recitations during the dead of night, though Dr. Moreau swore she had locked the windows and extinguished all lights. Her journal became increasingly fragmented. "I see them now. Figures in the periphery. Faces half-formed, their mouths open in silent scream. Attempts to photograph the manuscript yielded only blurred images. Each time a page was turned, a strange mark like a fingerprint appeared at the bottom of the page. They were faint, as though pressed by an unseen hand. The more pages she read, the more these marks multiplied. One by one, they formed patterns, abstract, almost mathematical, spanning across the manuscript like a web of invisible ink. A chilling realization began to dawn. The manuscript did not simply tell stories. It did not merely reveal text. It created a link, a bridge between the reader's mind and the narrative. Some believe the cursed manuscript of Eldwin Keep is a vessel, an ancient container for something far older, a consciousness, imprisoned and longing. Or worse, a trap designed to ensnare the curious. The payoff emerges in the form of fragmented testimony. Dr. Moreau's last written entry is disjointed, barely legible. The pages, they know me. I cannot stop. Each word, a thread into, I feel it pulling. She vanished soon after, leaving only the manuscript. Subsequent researchers dared not approach it. Libraries refused to catalogue it. Museums turned it away. Even occultists avoided it. The resolution remains unresolved. Each page turned leaves a mark, an imprint of the reader's own consciousness, faint but indelible. Every word spoken aloud deepens the link. Every sentence read draws the reader closer. To what? Nobody knows. Some whisper the manuscript is not cursed by accident, but by design. A safeguard against uncovering truths man was never meant to know. Others claim it is a record of those who were consumed, that the words themselves are alive, shifting, breathing, forever waiting for the next hand to touch them. The cursed manuscript of Eldwin Keep remains, silent, blank, yet ever-changing. Its pages glow faintly beneath the moon, unyielding, unforgiving. And no matter how long the centuries pass, the marks persist, a reminder that some knowledge is not a gift, but a curse. High above the city of Cusco, where the Andes roll like ancient sentinels and clouds drift lazily over jagged peaks, lies a structure that seems to defy human comprehension. This is Sacsayhuaman, the fortress of the Inca, a sprawling complex of walls built with enormous stones, some weighing over 100 tons, interlocked with an almost supernatural precision. The hook begins in the moment you first approach the site. Massive stones rise in stepped terraces, their edges perfectly cut, their surfaces smoothed until they appear to have been sculpted by the gods themselves. Walk among them, and you feel a vertiginous awe. The sheer size of the stones, the impossibility of their arrangement, and the meticulous way each massive block fits together as if moulded specifically for the one beneath it. No mortar binds the walls. Yet they have endured centuries of earthquakes, landslides, and the relentless winds of the Andes, standing as immovable as the mountains themselves. The tension is immediate. Archaeologists and engineers alike struggle to explain how the Incas, without iron tools, pulleys, or wheeled vehicles, could have quarried, transported, and positioned stones of such colossal weight with centimetre-perfect accuracy. Even modern construction would find this feat difficult. Some propose the use of ramps, levers, and brute manpower, a testament to human ingenuity and patience. Yet calculations suggest that the effort and coordination required would have been monumental, almost beyond the capacity of even a sophisticated pre-Columbian society. Then the twist emerges. Some researchers argue that the precision goes beyond human capability of the time. The stones interlock like three-dimensional puzzles, each irregularly shaped yet fitted together with such care that not even a knife blade can be inserted between many of the blocks. Corners are beveled, surfaces polished, angles exact to fractions of a millimeter. Alternative theories abound. Some suggest unknown ancient technologies, perhaps now lost machines, advanced tools, or techniques passed down from a civilization predating the Inca. Others dare whisper alien intervention, proposing that visitors from beyond the stars could have guided the construction, their knowledge far surpassing the technological capacity of 15th century humans. But beyond speculation, the fortress itself speaks in silence. The walls curve in sweeping arcs, echoing the contours of the surrounding mountains, as if the builders sought not merely to dominate the landscape, but to harmonize with it. A profound understanding of geometry, earth, and stone is etched into every terrace, suggesting that Sacsayhuaman was not merely defensive, but symbolic. A deliberate statement of power, knowledge, and spiritual intent. The payoff is both awe-inspiring and unsettling. Sacsayhuaman stands not merely as a fortress, but as a testament to forgotten ingenuity and resilience. It challenges our understanding of history, forcing us to ask how much of the past has been deliberately erased, misunderstood, or left unrecorded. Walk along its terraces, and the air hums with the memory of those who toiled to raise these stones. The walls themselves seem to hold the pulse of human ambition and ingenuity, yet their perfection hints at guidance that may have been beyond human reach. As clouds swirl around the peaks, casting fleeting shadows across the walls, one cannot help but feel the weight of time pressing down. Every stone, every joint, every curve of Sacsayhuaman whispers a story of power, knowledge, and secrets lost to history. And yet, the fortress remains unbroken. Its walls, silent and monumental, stand as guardians of a past we can glimpse but never fully understand. A question lingers in the high-altitude wind. How many truths of human civilization have been deliberately hidden, masked by time, or left to whisper in stone? Sacsayhuaman does not answer. It does not tremble. It simply stands an eternal monument to what was achieved, and perhaps what we have forgotten. In the blistering deserts of modern-day Iraq, where the land remembers empires that rose and fell in silence, a small clay jar lies hidden among the sands of history. Its discovery was unassuming, almost accidental, a simple, unremarkable artifact unearthed in the early 1932 near the ancient city of Baghdad. But this was no ordinary piece of pottery. Inside the jar sat a copper cylinder, neatly encased within an iron rod, all sealed with bitumen, a natural tar-like substance. At first glance, it seemed like little more than a relic of antiquity, a commonplace container. Yet, something about its construction set it apart. The hook of the mystery begins here. Could this ancient object dubbed the Baghdad battery actually have been an early form of electrochemical cell? When researchers first examined the artifact, they speculated wildly. Some proposed that the jars served as simple storage vessels. Others suggested they were ritualistic objects. Yet, the arrangement, the precise separation of metals, the insulating layer of bitumen, hinted at something far more deliberate. The tension builds as scientists debated fiercely. Mainstream archaeologists dismissed the idea outright, arguing that the design was coincidental. Copper and iron components were common in the region, and the apparent alignment of materials could easily have been accidental, a byproduct of unrelated technology or storage techniques. Critics scoffed at the notion that the ancient Mesopotamians, flourishing over 2,000 years ago, could have possessed knowledge of electricity, a concept thought to have been discovered only in the 18th century. Yet, alternative researchers persisted. Experimental recreations of the Baghdad battery, when filled with an acidic solution, vinegar, or lemon juice, produced a measurable voltage. Low, barely more than 1 volt, but significant nonetheless. The twist emerged when meticulous analysis of the electrodes revealed traces of corrosion and wear, consistent with extended use, rather than random degradation over centuries. The copper cylinders and iron rods bore microscopic marks, indicating repetitive insertion and removal, suggesting intentional design rather than happenstance. More astonishingly, similar batteries were found in nearby regions, suggesting the knowledge was not isolated to a single object, but part of a broader technological practice. What could such primitive batteries have been used for? Some suggest simple electroplating coating objects in thin layers of precious metals for decorative or functional purposes. Experiments show that recreations of the Baghdad battery are indeed capable of producing small currents sufficient for electroplating tiny objects. Others go further, proposing that the batteries were employed in rudimentary medical treatments, early attempts at electrotherapy, perhaps believed to cure ailments by stimulating the body with electric charge. The most provocative hypothesis suggests they were components of a much larger, now forgotten electrical network, built by ancient civilizations long before modern electricity was ever conceptualized. Could it be that ancient Mesopotamians harnessed electricity not as accidental pioneers, but as deliberate engineers of a forgotten power system? The payoff emerges when considering the implications of this possibility. If the Baghdad battery is evidence of ancient electricity, it suggests that scientific knowledge did not develop in a linear fashion. Perhaps it was discovered, then lost, and rediscovered millennia later. It raises unsettling questions. What other technologies did ancient civilizations possess, only to be buried by time? Were there electric devices, long since decomposed, that once powered temples, illuminated sacred spaces, or energized mysterious artifacts? The Baghdad battery does not hum. It does not pulse. It sits inert, a quiet sentinel of forgotten power. As the sun sets over the Mesopotamian plains, casting long shadows across the desert, one cannot help but imagine the hands that once held this small jar, carefully assembling its copper and iron innards, pouring acidic liquids into its core and connecting it to unknown apparatuses. Who were they? What drove them to create this small but profound device? Perhaps they believed they were channeling the power of the gods. Or perhaps they stumbled upon a force beyond understanding, a spark of nature's hidden potential. The clay jar remains sealed, its contents preserved by time. Its electrodes, corroded yet unmistakably deliberate, bear silent witness to an ancient experiment. The power, unseen, yet perhaps never lost. An echo of electricity, a whisper of what once was, or what could still be. Beneath the relentless sun of Peru's arid southern desert, stretching over a forbidding plain of reddish-brown earth, lies one of humanity's most perplexing creations. Spanning hundreds of square kilometers, the Nazca lines are an immense network of geoglyphs drawn in the soil with such precision and scale that their true form emerges only when viewed from high above. The hook of this ancient mystery is immediately breathtaking. Some of the most famous designs depict giant animals, monkeys, hummingbirds, spiders, and whales, each measuring hundreds of meters across. Simple lines crisscross the landscape, forming long, straight paths, geometric figures, and complex spirals. These enormous designs were created by removing the top layer of reddish stones, revealing the lighter-colored soil beneath, a process that preserved the figures for centuries in the region's extreme dryness. But why? Why did the ancient Nazca people, who flourished between 500 BCE and 500 CE, invest so much effort in crafting geoglyphs that could not be fully appreciated from the ground, and whose meaning remains tantalizingly elusive? Mainstream archaeology suggests practical explanations. The lines may have functioned as astronomical calendars, marking the rising and setting points of celestial bodies. Others propose they served as ritual pathways, walked by priests or shamans during religious ceremonies, a physical manifestation of sacred journeys. Yet these explanations, while intriguing, do not account for the full complexity. The tension deepens with each discovery. In recent years, satellite imagery and aerial surveys have uncovered previously unknown glyphs, some so intricate that their very existence raises more questions than answers. One set of newly discovered lines appears to align perfectly with the rising of specific stars, particularly constellations not fully understood or observed by the ancient Nazca themselves. Some glyphs exhibit astonishing geometric precision angles, curves, and proportions so exact they defy manual measurement, especially considering the tools known to exist in that era. Moreover, several lines extend for kilometers in near-perfect straightness, despite the rough terrain of the Nazca Desert. To achieve such precision without aerial perspectives, as would only have been available millennia later, seems impossible. Then comes the twist. Alternative researchers suggest that the lines are not meant for human eyes at all. Instead, they propose a provocative theory. The Nazca lines were messages designed for the gods, or perhaps for ancient visitors from the stars. They argue that the geoglyphs served as beacons or landing markers for unidentified flying beings, a prehistoric attempt at communication, a message written in the language of geometry and scale. Some of the animal figures, such as the enigmatic hummingbird or the condor, appear stylized in ways that suggest symbolic significance far beyond mere artistic expression. Could they represent star constellations, sacred animals, or even alien symbols? Adding to the intrigue, researchers have found traces of ancient effigies and platforms nearby, suggesting that the Nazca people conducted ceremonies in connection to these lines. Yet there is no record, oral or written, explaining their purpose. Another strange detail is the lack of habitation directly adjacent to many of the lines. The people who created them did not live in permanent settlements near the geoglyphs. Rather, these creations seem entirely ceremonial, purposeless from a practical standpoint, yet monumental in effort. The payoff emerges when we contemplate their scale. Viewed from the ground, the lines are almost meaningless, appearing as faint scratches in the desert floor. But from above, their grand design emerges, as though someone intended them to be seen from the sky, waiting for eyes that could only arrive much later in human history. Could these lines be a ritualistic attempt to communicate with beings far beyond our comprehension? A desperate plea, etched in earth and time, to call the attention of unseen watchers? Perhaps they were constructed as part of an elaborate religious belief system, connecting the Nazca people with the cosmos, binding earth and sky in a silent pact. Or maybe, just maybe, they are the last remnant of a global system of geoglyphs, an ancient network of terrestrial markers designed for a purpose lost to history. As the desert wind whispers across the barren expanse, shifting the fine dust ever so slightly, the lines remain unmoved. Their scale, geometry, and precision continue to defy understanding. The Nazca lines do not explain themselves. They do not hum or glow. They simply lie there. A message without a recipient. A prayer without a voice. Silent, vast, and waiting. Beneath the immense sky, the desert remains infinite and eternal. An untouched canvas of ancient High atop a gentle hill in southeastern Turkey, where the Anatolian plateau stretches endlessly beneath wide, cloud-streaked skies, lies a place that shakes the foundations of history itself. The site is called Göbekli Tepe, meaning Potbelly Hill, and it stands as the oldest known monumental structure created by humankind, dating back some 12,000 years. Long before the age of written language, before the rise of agriculture or the establishment of settled villages, the builders of Göbekli Tepe undertook an enormous, deliberate construction project. Here, in the pre-dawn era of human development, they erected massive stone pillars arranged in circular enclosures. Some of these megaliths tower over 5 meters high, weighing as much as 20 tons, adorned with intricate carvings of strange animals, lions, snakes, scorpions, and vultures, images that seem to speak of a lost mythology. The hook of this mystery lies in the inverted timeline it forces us to confront. For decades, conventional archaeology argued that organized religion emerged as a consequence of agriculture. That is, once humans began farming, they accumulated surplus food, formed villages, and only then developed religious structures. Göbekli Tepe turns this logic upside down. Here, at a time when humanity was presumed to consist of small bands of hunter-gatherers roaming vast wildernesses, people assembled by the thousands to construct monumental stone circles. Why? What drove them to this immense effort? The tension deepens when researchers examine the symbols and reliefs etched into the limestone pillars. Some of the carvings depict animals in startling detail: a crouching fox, a pair of vultures flanking a mysterious humanoid figure, scorpions poised as if guarding a secret gate. No written language accompanies the images, but the symbolism is unmistakably deliberate, an encoded message, perhaps a ritualistic practice predating the advent of written word. Archaeologists have spent decades trying to understand the purpose of Göbekli Tepe. Was it a temple, a sacred meeting place for ancient hunter-gatherers to commune with unseen forces? Or was it an astronomical observatory, aligned with celestial bodies to mark the passage of seasons or significant cosmic events? The twist arises when researchers discover the lack of domestic artifacts: no hearths, no food storage pits, no typical signs of long-term settlement. This suggests that Göbekli Tepe was never meant to be a home, but rather a gathering place, possibly for periodic ceremonies. Some theorists propose an extraordinary idea that religion came before agriculture itself. Perhaps it was the shared belief in a greater power, the ritualistic rites held here, that catalyzed the cooperation necessary to develop farming. In this interpretation, the divine need, the urge to honor gods or spirits, drove humans to settle, to cooperate, and only then to cultivate the land. Microscopic analysis of the limestone pillars reveals something equally baffling. The carvings were made with such precision that modern researchers, even with today's advanced tools, struggle to replicate them. Fine incisions suggest tools of unknown sophistication, or an advanced knowledge of stonework techniques lost in time. One particular pillar stands out, a T-shaped monolith adorned with bas-reliefs of animals interwoven in mysterious patterns. Its shape seems to resemble the human form itself, suggesting anthropomorphic worship, but no clear cultural analogue exists. Speculation runs wild. Some suggest Göbekli Tepe represents the last echo of a pre-flood civilization, an advanced people whose knowledge was wiped away by catastrophe. Others hint at extraterrestrial influence, positing that these towering monoliths were constructed with knowledge of geometry and engineering beyond the grasp of prehistoric humans. Yet the most haunting interpretation remains the simplest. Göbekli Tepe is a testament to human belief, an ancient impulse to connect with the unknown, to carve meaning out of chaos, and perhaps, more than that, a desperate prayer against oblivion. As dusk descends over the plateau, casting long shadows between the monolithic circles, the atmosphere becomes otherworldly. The wind carries a faint echo, soft, almost imperceptible, as though the stones themselves remember the hands that raised them. The enclosures are empty now, their purpose lost. But one cannot shake the feeling that the carvings speak of something eternal, a prayer never uttered aloud, a message never decoded, a secret never fully revealed. What drove those ancient people to undertake such an immense and enigmatic project? Was it reverence, fear, knowledge, or something beyond comprehension? Göbekli Tepe's stones do not whisper answers. They do not shift or tremble. They remain heavy, silent, unyielding, holding, perhaps forever, the ancient, forgotten prayer of humanity's first. In the dim, hushed corridors of the Yale University Beinecker Rare Book and Manuscript Library, beneath the protective glare of soft museum lighting, rests one of the most baffling relics in human history. A medieval manuscript so enigmatic, so impenetrable, that for over a century it has defied every attempt to unlock its meaning. This is the Voynich manuscript. Bound in worn, yellowed vellum, its 240 pages are filled with peculiar, undulating script, an unknown alphabet that curves and twists like the whisper of an alien tongue. Between these strange words lie intricate, often bizarre illustrations of unrecognizable plants, astrological charts, naked figures bathing in green pools, and mysterious apparatuses that appear neither scientific nor fantastical, but somewhere in between. The hook of the story is almost surreal. Who wrote this manuscript, and why? What knowledge does it conceal? Named after the rare book dealer Wilfrid Voynich, who purchased it in 1912, the manuscript has since become the holy grail of cryptography, a puzzle so perplexing that not a single expert has been able to decipher its meaning. Not codebreakers of World War I, nor modern-day artificial intelligence algorithms designed to tackle the most complex ciphers have succeeded. Decades of effort have yielded nothing conclusive. Scholars have tried to match its script to ancient languages, extinct dialects, or constructed alphabets, but every attempt collapses into speculation. Some claim it is an elaborate hoax, a medieval prank designed to fool the curious and the gullible. Others believe it is an encrypted compendium of forbidden knowledge, a grimoire, an alchemist's personal diary, or a manual for long-lost science. The tension deepens when modern radiocarbon dating places the manuscript's creation between 1404 and 1438, firmly situating it in a time of alchemical exploration, secret societies, and guarded religious knowledge. Yet no known author is linked to its production. No signature, no watermark, no historical record connects it to any individual. The most tantalizing twist arises from the marginalia, handwritten annotations in Latin, added centuries after the manuscript was first created. These notes, discovered upon close inspection, suggest that someone regarded the text as valuable, worthy of study. They do not mock it as nonsense, but instead reference botanical names, astronomical observations, and other alchemical terms. One such marginal note describes the manuscript as a personal diary of a European alchemist, hinting that the drawings are not random, but deliberate depictions of plants, potions, and esoteric processes. Could it be that the Voynich manuscript is not an arbitrary collection of gibberish, but rather an encrypted record of knowledge too dangerous to be revealed? The payoff emerges when considering the manuscript's illustrations. Some of the plant drawings depict species that do not exist in any known botanical record. Their roots twist in impossible angles, their leaves curve in unnatural ways, and their flowers bloom in bizarre, otherworldly patterns. Are these real plants, long extinct and forgotten? Or are they symbolic representations of processes, substances, or metaphysical concepts lost to time? Equally perplexing are the diagrams. Circular charts, some resembling star maps, others more abstract, seem to encode information about celestial movements, lunar phases, or perhaps even alchemical transmutations. One particular page shows a complex array of interconnected circles, lines, and arrows, suggesting an elaborate system of measurement or a recipe, but for what remains impossible to determine. In recent years, advanced AI programs have been employed to analyze the manuscript's structure, searching for statistical patterns that might suggest a natural language. Some results indicate non-randomness, hinting at linguistic regularity. Yet, every hypothesis is met with dead ends. No algorithm has cracked the code. No pattern yields a word. The manuscript sits in silence, its yellowed pages carefully turned only by gloved hands. Every curve of its script, every line of its drawings, seems deliberately placed to resist understanding. Could the Voynich manuscript be the last surviving fragment of a global network of secret knowledge? A forbidden recipe for medicines that cure the incurable, a method for transmuting base metals into gold, or even a guide to understanding the cosmos in a way modern science refuses to acknowledge. Some theorists suggest the manuscript was encoded to hide the identity of its author, perhaps a shadowy figure connected to early secret societies, a clandestine order that guarded knowledge too dangerous for public eyes. Others go even further, proposing it was designed as a message to future generations, an artifact meant to survive millennia, deliberately constructed to challenge the intellect, awaiting the right mind to decipher its meaning when the time was ripe. But perhaps the most haunting possibility is that the manuscript is a personal reflection of its creator, a deeply private compendium of ideas and images known only to the alchemist who transcribed it, designed not to be read, but to remain eternally unread. As the last ray of sunlight filters through the library windows, falling softly upon the ancient pages, one is struck by the stillness of the moment. The manuscript's script, indecipherable and alien, seems to pulse faintly, as if absorbing the weight of centuries of unanswered questions. What truths have we buried, unwilling to accept? Why does it refuse to yield its secrets? What knowledge lies hidden in the curves of its indecipherable letters? The Voynich manuscript's pages close softly, a whisper of parchment folding onto itself, its mystery never ending, silent, unbreakable. There is a strange consistency to humanity's oldest myths. From the frozen tundra of Siberia to the valleys of South America, from the tribal legends of North America to the scriptures of the Bible, whispers rise of beings larger than men, giants, who once walked the earth. The stories vary in their details, but their core is the same. The world was once ruled, or at least visited, by colossal beings, whose size, strength, and knowledge dwarfed those of ordinary humans. And again, these legends are bound to stone to cyclopean walls, to towers of impossible scale, to megaliths whose placement defies explanation. It is tempting to dismiss such tales as folklore, the exaggerations of memory or myth, but the sheer universality of them forces pause. Why should cultures, separated by oceans and time, all tell the same story? Why should the oral traditions of the Hopi, the Celts, the Sumerians, the Norse, and the Andean peoples converge on the same haunting image? That giants once raised the stones we still struggle to explain today? In the book of Genesis, there is a brief and puzzling passage. There were giants in the earth in those days. These were the Nephilim, born of the union between the sons of God and the daughters of men. Their presence, the text says, was one of the reasons for the great flood to cleanse the earth of their corruption. Far older still are the Sumerian myths. The Anunnaki, the mighty beings who descended from the heavens, are often portrayed as towering figures who imparted knowledge of agriculture, astronomy, and law. Were they gods, or were they remembered as giants because of their stature and power? In Greek mythology, the Gigantes waged war against the Olympians, their size so vast that their battles shook the mountains. In Norse myth, the Jotnar frost giants were older than the gods themselves, forces of chaos and creation intertwined. The Celts spoke of the Fomorians, monstrous beings, often giant-like, who ruled before humans took the land. Across the Atlantic, the Paiute of Nevada told of the Site Ka, a race of red-haired giants who lived in the region before being destroyed by native tribes. In Mesoamerica, Aztec myths recalled the Quinametsin giant builders of Teotihuacan and other vast structures, who perished when the world was remade. And high in the Andes, legends of the Collao people spoke of giants who descended from the sea, terrifying the villages until the sun itself intervened to burn them away. The pattern is uncanny. Giants, as builders, as destroyers, as knowledge bearers, always tied to humanity's earliest and most inexplicable monuments. Look at Baalbek in Lebanon, where single stones weigh over 1,000 tons. Look at Puma Punku in Bolivia, where blocks are carved with precision that seems almost industrial. Look at the massive earthworks of North America, the long barrows of Britain, the dolmens of Korea. Everywhere, there are structures that strain the credibility of human hands and primitive tools alone. Archaeology insists these were feats of ingenuity, of labor, of countless generations stacking stone upon stone, yet local traditions rarely credit themselves. Time and again, the people who live in the shadow of these ruins say the same. We did not build this, it was the giants. At Tiwanaku, the Aymara say the great blocks were moved by beings of immense size. In the Mediterranean, the ruins of ancient Malta are called Eugantesia, literally the giant's tower. The dolmens of Brittany were once called Pierres des Géants. In Ireland, the hexagonal stones of the giant's causeway bear the same memory. Even Stonehenge, before being attributed to Druids, was once said to have been assembled by giants who carried the stones from distant lands. It is a remarkable phenomenon. Cultures disclaiming ownership of their own heritage, assigning instead the credit or the blame to beings larger than life. If giants were real, then where are they now? Where are their bones? Here the story grows murkier and darker. Throughout the 19th and early 20th centuries, newspapers across America reported strange finds. Skeletons unearthed in burial mounds, measuring 7, 8, even 10 feet tall. In Wisconsin, in Ohio, in West Virginia, in Nevada, reports of giant remains made headlines. Some described double rows of teeth, elongated skulls, or anomalous bone structures, but almost invariably, the stories end the same way. The bones are sent to museums, often to the Smithsonian Institution, and then disappear. No record, no display, no acknowledgement. Skeptics claim the reports were hoaxes, products of sensationalist journalism. Believers counter that evidence was deliberately suppressed to protect the prevailing narrative of human history. Even outside the United States, whispers persist. In Sardinia, locals speak of caves where giant bones were once visible. In the deserts of Peru, elongated skulls, though perhaps the product of cranial binding, are often invoked as traces of giant ancestry. In the Caucasus, in India, in Africa, tales of giant skeletons being unearthed flicker and vanish like sparks in the dark. Could it be that, if such bones were truly found, they were destroyed or hidden because they contradicted too much? That they suggested humanity's story is not as straightforward as the textbooks claim? Of course, there is another possibility. Perhaps the giants were never literal beings, but symbolic ones. Giants may have represented the awe of early humans before the great works of nature. Towering mountains, massive boulders, storms that shook the earth. They may have been metaphors for the oppressive power of neighboring tribes, the exaggerated memory of enemies long conquered. Yet this explanation struggles to account for the precision with which giant myths align with megalithic structures. Why, again and again, are giants remembered not just as warriors or monsters, but as builders, as the raisers of stone? It suggests something more. That the myths may preserve a memory, however distorted, of real beings who once lived among us, whether they were simply a race of unusually tall humans, or something more alien to our understanding. Imagine the world after a cataclysm, civilizations shattered, cities gone, knowledge lost. Survivors cling to life, their descendants inheriting only fragments of what once was. Among the scattered peoples, stories circulate of those who came before, beings taller, stronger, who could move mountains and raise temples with their hands. Over centuries, those stories would become myths, the giants magnified with every retelling. And perhaps, in the ruins of Baalbek, in the toppled stones of Tiwanaku, in the buried circles of Britain, we still see the fingerprints of that forgotten age. Whether the builders were literal giants or not, the effect is the same. They leave us with structures so immense, so enigmatic, that we feel small in their shadow. To walk among the stones is to feel this truth in your bones. At Baalbek, you stand at the base of the trilithon, and its weight crushes your imagination. At Puma Punku, the precision of a single cut defies the chisel in your hand. At Stonehenge, the scale of labour boggles the mind. And in that moment, you cannot help but ask yourself, did human hands truly do this alone? Or were there once giants here, shaping the world in stone? The answer may never be known. The bones may remain hidden, the myths forever ambiguous, but the stones endure massive, unyielding, eternal, and in their silence, they whisper of a past in which giants, whether flesh and blood or memory and myth, walked among men and built with. The desert at night is a paradox, silent yet alive, barren yet filled with whispers. Under the sweep of the Milky Way, the sands of North Africa gleam like a silvered sea, each grain a fragment of eternity. And standing in this vast emptiness, as if left behind by hands that understood the heavens more than we ever will, are circles of stone. Weathered, broken, half buried by time, they do not call attention to themselves. But align them with the stars, measure their positions with patience, and suddenly the impossible emerges. These stones predate the pyramids, the pharaohs, even the first lines of recorded history. It is here, at Nabta Playa in southern Egypt, that one of the oldest known stone circles rests beneath the desert sky. Discovered in the 1972, this circle lies near what was once a seasonal lake, a gathering place for nomadic peoples 6,000 or 7,000 years ago. But the circle is not random. Its stones align with the rising of Sirius, the brightest star in the heavens, and mark the summer solstice, the moment when rains would return to the Sahara and life would flourish once again. What makes Nabta Playa extraordinary is not only its age, but its sophistication. Long before Stonehenge, before Sumer or Babylon, here were people tracking the stars, embedding their calendars in stone. They were not simple herders, scratching out a living on the edge of the desert. They were sky watchers, mathematicians, and architects of memory. The stones themselves are modest, some less than a metre high, rough and unshaped, and yet their simplicity hides a staggering complexity. Their alignments are too precise to be accidental. Researchers believe the circle may have tracked not only solstices, but the precession of the equinoxes, the slow wobble of Earth's axis, a cycle spanning nearly 26,000 years. How could Neolithic herders, with no telescopes or written language, have encoded such a vast cycle into their monuments? Some suggest they did not discover this knowledge alone. Perhaps it was inherited fragments of an older tradition, passed down from an age already fading, an echo of the pre-flood world whispered into stone. Thousands of miles south, on a rocky plateau in modern-day South Africa, another circle tells a story no less mysterious. Locals call it Adam's Calendar. Perched on the edge of the Drakensberg Mountains, it is said to be one of the oldest man-made structures on Earth. The circle is crude in appearance. Weathered dolerite stones arranged in an oval, some toppled, some still standing. But when measured, the alignments leap into focus. The stones mark the solstices and equinoxes with startling accuracy. Some researchers, most notably Michael Tellinger, argue that Adam's calendar is over 75,000 years old, a claim that, if true, would upend everything we know about the timeline of civilization. Mainstream archaeology scoffs at this date, suggesting the circle is far younger, perhaps only a few thousand years old. Yet, even conservative estimates admit it is ancient, and its purpose remains unresolved. Was it a ritual site, a calendar, or something more, a cosmic marker left by people whose connection to the stars was woven into daily life? Stone circles are scattered, like forgotten footprints, across the world. In Britain, Stonehenge looms most famously, a great ring of megaliths whose construction spans centuries. In Brittany, in France, the Karnak stones march in rows for miles, aligned in ways still debated. In Jordan's deserts, vast wheels of stone can only be seen from the air, their radial symmetry baffling archaeologists. Across South America, circular arrangements of stones hint at forgotten observatories, lost beneath jungles and plains. The pattern repeats. People everywhere, at the dawn of history, dragging immense stones into circles, aligning them with the heavens. Why? Some say it was survival calendars written into the earth to track planting, harvest, and migration. Others see something more profound, an obsession with the stars, with cycles that outlived generations, with aligning humanity to the cosmic order. To ancient minds, perhaps, the stars were not distant balls of fire, but the souls of ancestors, the seats of gods, the eternal blueprint of life. And yet, there are always anomalies. At Nabta Playa, some alignments point not to present stars, but to how they appeared thousands of years earlier, suggesting the builders accounted for precession. At Adam's calendar, the central stones line with Orion's belt, as it would have appeared tens of thousands of years ago. Were these deliberate or coincidence? Even more curious are the acoustic properties of some stone circles. At Stonehenge, sounds echo in ways that amplify certain frequencies, as if designed for ritual chants. Could circles have served as more than calendars, perhaps as resonant chambers, where stone and voice merged to bridge the earthly and the divine? The deeper question lingers like desert wind. Why circles? Why did so many disparate peoples across continents and millennia carve the same shape into the land? The circle has no beginning and no end. It is the sun, the moon, the endless cycle of birth and death. It is the wheel of time, the echo of the stars' eternal rotation. In carving circles of stone, perhaps ancient peoples were not merely building monuments, but inscribing eternity into earth itself. Yet, there is one more possibility, one that unsettles the mind. What if these circles were not independent creations, but fragments of a single tradition, scattered after a great cataclysm? If the flood myths are true, if an earlier civilization was lost, then perhaps these circles were the breadcrumbs it left behind, markers of knowledge preserved across the ruins of the world. Standing at Nabta Playa, the desert wind hissing against the stones, you feel the weight of silence. Above you, Sirius burns, the same star that rose for the builders 6,000 years ago. Time collapses in that moment. The past is not gone, it is here, watching. At Adam's calendar, the stones lean like weary sentinels, staring across the South African plains as they have for ages beyond count. You cannot help but wonder, who first placed them here, and why did they trust stone with their message instead of words? The circles endure, but their voices are faint. We walk among them, measuring angles, debating dates, but the deeper truth lies just beyond reach, as if deliberately hidden. Perhaps that is their purpose, to remind us that the past is not dead, that mysteries older than time itself still wait in the stones beneath our feet. And as the stars wheel overhead, as they have since long before the first human lifted a stone, the question lingers: are we uncovering the beginning of our story, or only rediscovering the fragments of a tale that has no beginning? The air is brittle, biting with a silence so complete it seems unnatural. Antarctica is not merely cold, it is otherworldly, a vast white continent at the bottom of the globe, locked away beneath 2 miles of ice. From the deck of an icebreaker, or through the grainy lens of a satellite feed, the land appears empty, uninhabited, untouched. And yet, within this frozen desert, whispers circulate of something else, of walls that rise from the ice like colossal fortresses, of geometric patterns too precise to be the work of wind and weather, of secrets buried since before the dawn of recorded history. The story begins with satellite images. Strange anomalies captured in the silent pixels of orbital scans, long, straight lines running for miles beneath the snow, sharp angles, and structures that seem far too deliberate. Amateur researchers pore over Google Earth, tracing rectangles and domes on the continent's frozen surface, convinced that they are seeing the edges of cities entombed in ice. Among these anomalies are what some call the ice walls, sheer vertical formations, towering ridges that look, at first glance, like natural cliffs, but in photographs appear uncannily regular, as though constructed. Could these be the remains of a civilization erased by time and frozen into silence? Antarctica is the most forbidding landscape on Earth, and perhaps that is why it has attracted such fascination. The continent is a blank slate, no ancient cities, no buried temples, no pyramids, or so we are told. But the ice has not always been there. Geological records suggest that millions of years ago, Antarctica was temperate, covered in forests and flowing rivers. Fossilized leaves, pollen, and even dinosaur remains have been unearthed from beneath the ice, suggesting a lush land once thrived here. Even more provocative is the possibility that Antarctica may have been ice-free far more recently. Some cartographic mysteries, like the famous Piri Reis map of 1513, depict southern landmasses uncannily resembling Antarctica, not shrouded in ice, but outlined with coastal detail. How could sailors of the Renaissance draw a continent supposedly unknown to them, and worse, show its shoreline as if uncovered? Was the map based on older, now lost charts, relics of a time when Antarctica's coasts were navigable, when its secrets were not buried in frozen tombs? The theories of pre-flood civilizations inevitably circle back to Antarctica. If the great cataclysm remembered in myth drowned cities and shifted climates, could it have entombed an entire advanced world here, beneath the ice? Plato spoke of Atlantis vanishing beneath the sea. But what if some of its remnants were not drowned but frozen? If seas swallowed some lands, glaciers might have sealed others in place, locking away archives of a forgotten epoch. In the 20th century, whispers began to emerge of expeditions that encountered more than ice. One of the most enduring legends is that of Admiral Richard Byrd, who led Operation High Jump in 1946-47, one of the largest expeditions ever sent to Antarctica. Officially, it was a military and scientific mission. Unofficially, some claim Byrd encountered things not meant for human eyes: vast openings into the earth, warm valleys free of ice, and structures of impossible scale. In later years, conspiracy theorists would seize on Byrd's interviews, where he hinted at discoveries beyond the pole that suggested a land rich with resources and mysteries yet untold. Then there are the persistent rumours of forbidden zones. Portions of Antarctica are cordoned off, inaccessible even to research teams. The Antarctic Treaty, signed in 1959, restricts military activity and resource exploitation, but to some, it reads like a pact of silence. Why would the nations of the world agree to collectively seal away the most remote continent unless there was something there to hide? The ice walls themselves are a riddle. Images show cliffs that rise vertically for hundreds of feet, their surfaces smooth and uniform, almost like cyclopean masonry. Naturalists argue they are the product of glacial shear, ice cracking, and breaking under immense pressure. But those who linger over the photographs notice patterns, blocks that appear stacked, ridges too straight to be random. They ask, is it possible that beneath the ice, these walls are not just frozen cliffs, but the outer bulwarks of ancient fortifications? Further intrigue comes from the detection of heat anomalies under the ice. NASA satellites and scientific surveys have recorded geothermal hotspots, areas where the temperature beneath the glaciers is far warmer than expected. Officially, This is due to volcanic activity. Yet the idea that heat sources lie hidden under 2 miles of ice has fueled speculation that something artificial may be generating energy, vast machines left running long after their builders vanished, now trapped beneath layers of snow. Legends from around the world speak of lands at the edge of the earth, realms of gods and giants hidden in the south. In Norse mythology, there are references to icy fortresses beyond mortal reach. In esoteric traditions, some whisper of Ultima Thule, a place of origin, a cradle of forgotten wisdom buried under endless snow. Could these have been faint cultural memories of Antarctica, a land of mystery whose truth was obscured by ice and time? Some researchers connect the continent to the myth of Atlantis itself. If Atlantis was a great seafaring civilization that fell during the Younger Dryas cataclysm, the same flood remembered in myths worldwide, perhaps parts of it shifted south, swallowed by glaciers instead of waves. The ice walls, then, are not natural cliffs, but the last faces of a drowned empire, frozen in silence. The tension between mainstream science and alternative history is sharpest here. To geologists, Antarctica's mysteries can be explained: shifting plates, glacial erosion, volcanic heat. To archaeologists, there is no credible evidence of ancient civilizations on the frozen continent. But to those who listen to the myths, who see patterns in the maps and the satellite images, who walk the echoing corridors of the Bosnian pyramids or the megaliths of Baalbek, Antarctica is the inevitable final piece. A continent large enough to hide not just one ruin, but an entire forgotten world. And yet, even scientists cannot deny that the ice itself is unstable. As global temperatures rise, glaciers retreat, and secrets locked away for millennia begin to surface. What happens if, in the coming decades, Antarctica reveals more than just fossils of trees and bones of dinosaurs? What if the ice walls crack, and behind them are chambers, tunnels, or the unmistakable outlines of something built? Standing on the edge of an Antarctic plateau, staring out at the endless white, it is almost impossible to imagine. The silence is overwhelming, pressing in from all directions. The sun circles low on the horizon, never truly setting, never truly rising, painting the snow in pale hues of gold and violet. It is a place that feels untouched, timeless, eternal. And yet, beneath those endless miles of ice, time itself is entombed. Perhaps the ice walls are only ice cliffs carved by glaciers, sculpted by wind, or perhaps they are more the final remnants of a civilization swallowed by a cataclysm we can barely comprehend. A civilization that once looked out on green forests and rivers, now locked in a frozen mausoleum. The question lingers like frost in the air. Is Antarctica truly empty, or is it the greatest archive of human history, waiting patiently for the thaw? And if the ice ever melts, will we be ready for what it reveals? The land of southeastern Turkey is harsh, its hills rolling like waves frozen in stone. Dry winds sweep across the plains, carrying with them the dust of millennia. For generations, the people who lived here believed a mound, an unremarkable rise of earth called Göbekli Tepe, or Potbelly Hill, was nothing more than a natural hill. Farmers ploughed near it. Shepherds grazed their flocks. The mound slept undisturbed, an anonymous wrinkle in the landscape. But in 1994, a man with a keen eye saw something that others had overlooked. Klaus Schmidt, a German archaeologist, noticed fragments of stone protruding from the surface. They were too smooth, too deliberate, too out of place. He began to dig, and what he uncovered would rewrite history. Beneath the soil were circles of massive stone pillars, some over 16 feet tall, weighing as much as 20 tons each. They were arranged with precision, locked into rings, their surfaces etched with carvings of animals, abstract shapes, and symbols. Snakes, scorpions, lions, vultures, creatures, both real and mythical, seemed to dance across the stone, frozen in bas relief. But here was the most shocking revelation. Göbekli Tepe was over 11,000 years old. That means it was built around 9000 BC, thousands of years before the pyramids of Egypt, before Stonehenge, before even the dawn of what we are told was civilization. The official timeline said humanity at that time was still hunter-gatherers, wandering bands with crude tools. No cities, no agriculture, no monumental architecture. And yet here was Göbekli Tepe, vast, precise, deliberately planned. It should not exist, and yet it does. The tension in the air was immediate. If hunter-gatherers built this, then they possessed knowledge and coordination we never imagined. If a more advanced civilization built it, then our history is incomplete. Either way, something had to give. And there is something stranger still. Göbekli Tepe was not abandoned and forgotten. It was deliberately buried. Sometime around 8000 BC, its builders filled in the rings with earth and rubble, preserving the stones, as though they knew they were leaving a message for the future. Who buries a temple? Who hides such a monument? The act was not destruction, it was preservation. Why? Look closer, and the stones themselves whisper clues. Some of the pillars are aligned with celestial bodies. Researchers have suggested that Göbekli Tepe may have served as an astronomical observatory, its rings tracking stars and constellations, perhaps even marking cataclysmic events. One carving, a vulture carrying what looks like a sphere, has been interpreted by some as a depiction of the younger Dryas comet, impact the very event around 12,800 years ago that brought sudden floods, mass extinctions, and the Great Reset we explored in Chapter 1. If true, then Göbekli Tepe is not merely a temple, it is a record, a message, a warning from those who survived the flood. Now, imagine the scene. Night falls over the Anatolian plain, torches flicker among the stone circles, shadows stretch across carvings of scorpions and birds. A gathering of people, priests, perhaps, or elders, stand in the center, their eyes lifted to the stars. They watch the heavens, measure alignments, and whisper to one another of cycles, of floods, of destruction that comes like clockwork. Perhaps they are not worshipping gods at all. Perhaps they are recording the language of the cosmos, encoding it in stone, leaving behind a blueprint for those who would come after. And the question returns, insistent, who were these people? Were they hunter-gatherers who somehow leapt into monumental architecture overnight? Or were they descendants of an older world, survivors of a pre-flood civilization carrying fragments of knowledge into a new age? The twist deepens when you recall Atlantis. Plato spoke of a civilization destroyed in a flood, its knowledge lost, its monuments buried. The Sumerian king list spoke of antediluvian rulers, their reigns impossibly long, ended by waters. Indigenous traditions across the globe tell of ancestors who survived by fleeing to high ground, building anew after the deluge. Göbekli Tepe sits right in that window of time between the great flood myths and the rebirth of recorded history. Too advanced for its age, deliberately preserved, aligned with the stars, echoing the very moment humanity supposedly rose from nothing. Could it be the smoking gun, a remnant of the forgotten world beneath our feet? Even its artistry defies expectation. The carvings are not random doodles, they are stylized, symbolic, as though part of a larger language. Some believe they encode constellations, others see totems of clans, still others claim they map catastrophic events. The pillars themselves, tall and T-shaped, may represent human figures, guardians or ancestors, holding vigil across millennia. And yet, there is silence, no writing, no inscriptions, no clear answers, only stone speaking in riddles, perhaps deliberately so. Perhaps the builders knew that language fades, but images endure. Skeptics argue, of course. They say the site was built by organized hunter-gatherers, that the discovery of agriculture may have been a consequence of constructing such a temple. They insist that no lost civilization is needed to explain Göbekli Tepe, but that explanation only raises more questions. How do nomadic tribes suddenly cooperate on such a massive scale? How do they quarry, transport, and carve stones weighing 20 tons without leaving behind evidence of villages, tools, or a slow progression of skill? Civilization is supposed to evolve gradually. Yet, Göbekli Tepe appears fully formed, like an idea too large to be born overnight. Here, the continuity thread sharpens. Recall the Black Pyramid of Alaska. If a pyramid of impossible scale could lie hidden, covered deliberately, what does that suggest about Göbekli Tepe's burial? Both may be part of the same instinct to preserve knowledge through catastrophe, to bury memory so it might outlast destruction. And so the theory emerges: these structures are not isolated anomalies. They are the blueprints of the gods, or of the survivors who once were mistaken for gods. Scattered across the earth, buried or hidden, they serve as markers in the great cycle of flood and fire. Close your eyes again. Picture yourself descending into one of Göbekli Tepe's circles at dawn. The air is cool, the stones radiate an ancient stillness. You run your hand along a pillar carved with a fox, its edges worn but unmistakable. Above, the first rays of sun spill across the landscape, striking the stone at just the right angle, as it has for over 10,000 years. You realize you are standing in a message, one not written in words, but in geometry, alignment, and myth. A message that whispers, "We were here before, we knew the stars, we knew the flood would come, and we wanted you to remember." Göbekli Tepe remains a riddle. Its builders are nameless, its purpose ambiguous, its burial deliberate, but its existence cannot be denied. And in that undeniable fact lies the crack in the story of human history. Civilization did not begin 6,000 years ago. Something older came before. Something advanced enough to leave behind a blueprint in stone. The blueprint of the gods. And as we leave Turkey's plains, the question lingers. If such a site could lie hidden for 10,000 years, how many others still sleep beneath oceans, deserts, and jungles? Our next step takes us beneath the waves to Japan's Yonaguni, where divers swim among sunken steps and temples, listening to the silence. The air is heavy with silence, broken only by the faint rustle of parchment as a researcher turns the fragile pages of a weathered manuscript. The words, though separated by vast distances and languages, whisper the same story: water rising, worlds swallowed, civilizations reset. It is a story older than any kingdom, older than any scripture. A story carved into the memory of the human race itself. Every culture, from the frozen tundras of the north to the rainforests of South America, tells it in its own voice, yet the refrain never changes. There was once a flood, a great and terrible deluge, that wiped the slate clean. The details shift like shadows, but the essence remains. Some speak of divine punishment, others of cosmic cycles, still others of arrogant men who dared to rival the gods. And though scholars debate whether these stories are mere allegory or fractured memories of a prehistoric cataclysm, one cannot escape the sense of unease that comes with their universality. Why does every corner of the human story echo with this singular theme? Why does the water never stop rising? In the baked clay tablets of Mesopotamia, we encounter perhaps the oldest known version, buried beneath the ruins of Nineveh, rediscovered in the 19th century. The Epic of Gilgamesh tells of Utnapishtim, a man chosen by the gods to survive the end of the world. He was commanded to build a massive boat, to seal it with bitumen, and to gather aboard his family, his animals, and the seeds of every kind of life. When the flood came, it raged for 6 days and 7 nights, swallowing cities, temples, and kings alike. Utnapishtim's vessel came to rest on a mountaintop, and he released a dove, then a raven, to test if the waters had receded. The parallels with the story of Noah in the Hebrew Bible are striking, almost unnervingly so. Noah too builds an ark under divine instruction, seals it with pitch, and releases a dove and a raven to find land. Yet the Mesopotamian tale predates the biblical narrative by over 1,000 years. Was one borrowed from the other? Or are they both drawn from a deeper, shared reservoir of memory, the echo of a real flood, passed down and reshaped across generations? Across the world, in India, in the Vedic texts, we find the story of Manu, the primordial man. As the tale goes, he was washing his hands in a river when a tiny fish swam into his cupped palms. The fish spoke, pleading for protection. Manu placed it in a jar, but the fish grew and grew until he had to release it into the ocean. Then the fish revealed itself as Matsya, an avatar of the god Vishnu, and warned him of an oncoming flood. Manu was instructed to build a great boat, and when the waters rose, the fish returned, towing the vessel to the safety of a mountain peak. Here too, the elements repeat: divine warning, construction of a boat, preservation of life, survival atop a mountain. The cycle of destruction and rebirth is presented not as punishment, but as part of cosmic order. Creation itself, in the Hindu view, moves in great cycles, ages of prosperity, followed by dissolution, each ending in fire or flood, only to begin anew. Humanity is not destroyed because it is wicked, but because the wheel must turn. Further west, among the ancient Greeks, we find the story of Deucalion and Pyrrha. Zeus, angered by the corruption of mankind, resolved to drown the world. Prometheus, the trickster Titan, warned his son Deucalion, who built an ark with his wife Pyrrha. When the waters receded, the couple sought to repopulate the earth. They were told by an oracle to cast the bones of their mother behind them. Misunderstanding at first, they eventually realized this meant the stones of Mother Earth. They threw the stones, which transformed into men and women, a rebirth of humanity from the ruins of the old. This version carries not just the theme of survival, but of renewal. The world is not merely preserved, it is reimagined, reforged in stone, as though the flood was a necessary cleansing before the birth of a stronger lineage. In the highlands of the Andes, far removed from Mesopotamia or Greece, the Inca tell of Viracocha, the great creator god. Displeased with the arrogance of his first creations, giants who disobeyed him, Viracocha sent a flood to erase them. He preserved only 2 humans in caves high above the waters, from whom the next age of mankind would descend. Once again, judgment, water, survival, rebirth. The elements shift, but the skeleton of the tale remains the same. Even the Maya, in their Popol Vuh, describe cycles of destruction and creation, one of which involves a flood. The gods, dissatisfied with their first attempts at making humans who were arrogant and ungrateful, sent a deluge to wipe them out before creating new men from maize, the sacred crop. And yet, the pattern is not confined to the Old World or the Americas. Native peoples of North America also tell of waters that rose to swallow the land. Among the Hopi, there is a story of successive worlds destroyed by fire, by ice, and by flood, each time leaving behind a remnant of survivors. The Lenape speak of a massive flood that covered the earth, from which only a few humans and animals escaped in a giant canoe. Among the Ojibwe, the tale speaks of a great turtle carrying the survivors on its back until land re-emerged. Even in far-flung Oceania, flood legends persist. In Hawaii, the god Cain sends torrential rains to drown the wicked, while a righteous man builds a canoe to escape. In the islands of the Pacific, myths tell of chiefs who fled to mountaintops or rode rafts across endless seas, carrying seeds and pigs to repopulate their drowned worlds. How is it that cultures separated by oceans, by language barriers, by thousands of years tell the same essential story? Is it a coincidence, a product of the human imagination that has always feared drowning? Or is it evidence that they all remembered something real, a global event so traumatic that its memory endured, encoded in myth across millennia? Geologists point to the end of the last ice age, around 12,000 years ago, when massive glaciers melted, raising sea levels by hundreds of feet. Coastlines vanished, plains became seabeds, and entire landscapes were swallowed. To the people living then, it must have felt like the wrath of the gods, an apocalypse in slow motion. Could this be the origin of the flood myths, the collective memory of a world drowning? Yet some evidence suggests cataclysm may have struck not slowly, but suddenly. The theory of the Younger Dryas impact proposes that fragments of a comet struck the Earth around 12,800 years ago, triggering wildfires, a rapid plunge in temperatures, and massive flooding from destabilized ice sheets. In this view, the myths are not mere metaphors, but eyewitness accounts to the desperate attempt of ancient humanity to explain why their world ended in a single generation. But here lies the twist. Not all versions of the story are about destruction. Some emphasize preservation, wisdom, even hidden knowledge. In Egyptian tradition, whispers of a hall of records tell of an underground library sealed before the flood, meant to preserve the wisdom of the gods for future generations. In Mesopotamia, kings claimed their right to rule by tracing their lineage back to antediluvian rulers who reigned before the flood. The deluge, in these contexts, was not just an ending, but a dividing line, a marker between two worlds, one lost forever, and one that inherited only fragments of its greatness. The flood is, in this sense, not just about water, but about memory. It represents the erasure of an old story and the fragile survival of a new one. Each culture may tell it differently, but all agree on this. We are not the first, there were others before us, and they, like us, believed their world would last forever. The silence deepens as the manuscripts are set aside. Across continents and centuries, the refrain is undeniable, the waters always come. And yet, so too does survival. Perhaps the greatest message hidden in these myths is not destruction, but resilience. The reminder that even in the face of unthinkable catastrophe, a remnant endures. But one question lingers in the air, like mist over a darkened sea. What else survived? If knowledge was preserved, if archives were hidden, if cities still sleep beneath the waves, then the flood myths are not just a warning, but a map. A breadcrumb trail leading us to the remnants of a world that came before. And somewhere, perhaps buried in stone or sand or sea, the echoes of that world still wait. High on the windswept plains of Bolivia, where the air is thin and the horizon seems endless, lies a place that defies every assumption we hold about the ancient world. The site is called Pumapunku, a set of ruins that, at first glance, might seem like nothing more than scattered stone blocks. But to walk among them is to feel the weight of a puzzle that refuses to fit neatly into history. The air here is sharp, carrying the sound of silence. No birds cry, no rivers rush, only the wind whispers over the plateau, as though guarding secrets too vast for human ears. And scattered across this barren landscape are stones so precise, so deliberate, that they appear almost out of place in the ancient world. The most famous among them are the H-shaped blocks, massive stones carved with geometric perfection, their angles crisp, their edges sharp as if cut by diamond tools. They lie toppled now, strewn like abandoned toys of some colossal child. But when archaeologists measured them, they found something astonishing. Each block is virtually identical, as if they were mass-produced according to a blueprint. The precision is staggering. Right angles cut into stone, millimeter-perfect grooves that align with one another, holes drilled as if by machines. To run your fingers along these edges is to feel not the roughness of chisel marks, but the smoothness of engineered surfaces. It is as though stone itself was treated not as rock, but as a malleable material, shaped with technology far beyond what is attributed to the pre-Incan cultures of the Andes. And yet, these blocks are thousands of years old, Conventional archaeology attributes them to the Tiwanaku culture flourishing around 500–1000 AD, but even that timeline raises questions. How could a society with no written language, no iron tools, and no wheels have carved and transported stones of such staggering precision? Some weigh more than 100 tons, they were quarried miles away. And still they were brought here, cut with uncanny accuracy, and assembled into structures whose original form we can only guess. Pumapunku is not just a scatter of blocks, it is a dismantled machine of stone. Archaeologists believe the H-blocks once interlocked, forming walls of staggering strength and complexity. Each stone was designed not as an isolated piece, but as part of a system like components in a vast construction kit. When researchers attempted to digitally model the stones, they discovered that the blocks were modular. Their notches and grooves suggest they were meant to fit together in multiple ways, creating interlinked patterns of astonishing sophistication. It is as though the builders were following a hidden code, an architectural language inscribed not in words but in geometry. This is why some call Pumapunku the Stone Code. The ruins seem less like a temple and more like the remnants of an engineered project, a place where form followed function, not ritual. The purpose of that function, however, remains hidden. Was this a fortress, a ceremonial platform, or was it something stranger, a kind of machine, its purpose long forgotten? To imagine the builders of Pumapunku working with simple stone hammers and copper chisels is to invite disbelief. The level of accuracy seen here is comparable to machine tooling. Some blocks bear perfectly straight drill holes, aligned with such precision that even modern engineers would struggle to replicate them in stone. Researchers have tested the cuts under microscopes and found them too smooth, too uniform to be explained by hand tools. Some suggest the use of advanced techniques, sonic drilling, abrasive saws, even the possibility of lost methods of softening stone. The ancients of the Andes knew metallurgy, yes, but not iron. They knew astronomy, but not geometry at this scale. Unless what we are seeing is a legacy, not an invention. Could Pumapunku be a remnant of knowledge passed down from an earlier epoch, a pre-flood civilization whose techniques survived only as whispers? If so, the Tiwanaku may have inherited the site rather than created it, layering their culture atop the ruins of something far older. The Andean people themselves preserve a myth that deepens the mystery. They speak of Viracocha, the great creator god, who emerged from Lake Titicaca after a great flood. Viracocha was said to have travelled the world, teaching the art of civilization, architecture, agriculture, astronomy. He was depicted as a bearded figure, tall and robed, unlike the native peoples of the Andes. According to legend, Viracocha and his followers built great structures before vanishing across the sea. When Spanish chroniclers heard these tales in the 16th century, they were shocked. How could isolated Andean peoples describe a figure so similar to old-world depictions of gods and sages? And more importantly, could Pumapunku itself be one of Viracocha's creations, a blueprint left behind by beings who knew far more than history admits? The ruins of Pumapunku do not lie neatly preserved. They are shattered, as if by an immense force. Stones lie toppled, scattered, their interlocking system disrupted. Some researchers suggest earthquakes, others point to cataclysmic flooding. Indeed, the Andean myths speak of a deluge that drowned the world, after which Viracocha restored order. Could Pumapunku have been destroyed in that flood? Could what we see now be the aftermath of a sudden and violent catastrophe? A city or complex reduced to rubble in a single event? If so, then the broken stones are not simply ruins, but the frozen moment of disaster, preserved on the windswept plateau like a photograph of calamity. If Pumapunku is what it seems a site of engineered precision, thousands of years ahead of its time, then the implications ripple outward like shockwaves. It suggests that our understanding of human history is incomplete, that knowledge may have risen, flourished, and been lost long before the timelines we accept. And if the H-blocks truly form a code, a modular system designed with intent, then we may not yet have deciphered it. What if Pumapunku is not only a ruin, but a message? What if the builders encoded principles of geometry, balance, or even energy into the very fabric of stone, leaving behind a puzzle for the future? Engineers who study the site are struck by its elegance. The interlocking design is earthquake-resistant, modular, efficient. It is not random. It is the work of minds who understood engineering at a level startling for their supposed time. To stand at Pumapunku is to feel a haunting sense of presence. The plateau stretches empty in every direction, the air thin, the silence absolute. And scattered, before you are stones carved with impossible precision, toppled but not erased. You place your hand against one of the H-blocks, tracing the edges, the grooves, the angles. It feels less like ancient stone and more like an artifact of some forgotten machine. You cannot help but imagine the builders, not primitive labourers with hammers, but engineers with methods lost to history. You imagine the sound of stone being cut, not by chisel, but by something faster, cleaner, more deliberate. And, as the wind sighs through the ruins, you feel the lingering echo of a secret, a code inscribed not in ink or clay, but in the very bones of the earth. A code that whispers of civilizations erased, of knowledge buried, of truths yet to be uncovered. Pumapunku does not give answers. It only offers precision stones too perfect to dismiss, too heavy to ignore, too mysterious to explain. They lie in silence, daring us to solve their puzzle. And perhaps, one day, when the code is broken, we will understand not only Pumapunku, but the forgotten epochs of humanity. The desert is both a graveyard and a vault. Its sands shift with the winds of centuries, burying temples, swallowing caravans, concealing entire cities as though they had never been. To walk the Sahara or the Egyptian plateau at night is to feel the weight of silence pressing down silence, not of absence, but of secrets. Beneath the dunes, countless stories are entombed, whole chapters of human history, sealed away in chambers no eye has seen for thousands of years. But among all the whispers of buried wonders, one legend persists above the rest. The story of the hidden library beneath the desert, a vast archive said to contain the knowledge of civilizations that flourished before the flood, knowledge deliberately hidden from the eyes of the unworthy. The most famous of these legends comes from Egypt, the land where sand and stone fuse into eternity. At the feet of the great Sphinx, whispers circulate of a hall of records, a secret chamber said to hold scrolls and tablets chronicling the lost history of mankind. Ancient Egyptian texts make cryptic references to such a place, a hall of knowledge left behind by the gods themselves, or perhaps by survivors of a catastrophe that wiped clean the world before ours. For centuries, seekers have probed the Giza Plateau in search of it. In the early 20th century, mystics like Edgar Cayce claimed that beneath the paw of the Sphinx lay a chamber containing records not only of Egypt, but of Atlantis, the mythical civilization swallowed by flood. Mainstream scholars dismissed these claims as fantasy. And yet, in the 1,990 seconds, seismic surveys conducted around the Sphinx revealed anomalies, voids, cavities, unexplained hollows beneath the bedrock. Were they natural fissures, or were they entrances? Egyptian authorities quickly clamped down on further investigation. Excavation permits were restricted, photographs were limited. To this day, questions remain unanswered. What lies beneath the Sphinx? The desert keeps its silence. But Egypt is not the only place where whispers of hidden libraries echo. Deep in the Sahara, far from the Nile's fertile strip, legends tell of buried cities where the sand conceals halls filled with stone tablets. In Mauritania, near the eye of the Sahara, the mysterious circular formation, visible even from space. Local stories speak of chambers sealed by catastrophe. Nomads passing through the region claim to have stumbled upon walls of dressed stone protruding from dunes, the entrances long collapsed. In Libya and Algeria, Tuareg tribes recount tales of ancient writings buried beneath the sand, said to be too powerful for ordinary people to read. Some connect these stories to the Garamantes, a desert people who built underground irrigation systems and fortified cities now lost beneath shifting dunes. Could they have left behind libraries that time forgot? The Sahara was not always a desert. 10,000 years ago, it was green, a land of rivers and savannas where giraffes and hippos roamed. Rock art carved into cliffs shows scenes of hunting, dancing, even boats, a thriving world. And then the climate shifted. The rivers dried, the sand came. Whatever archives existed may now lie beneath hundreds of feet of silence, waiting. The notion of hidden libraries is not confined to Africa. Across the world, myths converge on the idea of preserved knowledge, secret archives protected from catastrophe. In Tibet, there are tales of subterranean tunnels leading to chambers of wisdom guarded by monks. In South America, legends speak of the Golden Library of the Andes, a vault of metallic books buried in caves, its entrance concealed by shamans. In Mesopotamia, clay tablets describe how the gods instructed chosen men to build repositories of knowledge to survive the Great Flood. Is it possible that these are fragments of a single pattern? That after a global cataclysm, whether flood, fire, or shifting Earth survivors deliberately buried archives of knowledge to seed the rebirth of civilization? If so, then the libraries beneath the desert are not fantasy, but deliberate time capsules, messages to the future. But if such libraries exist, why have we not found them? The answer may lie in their very design. Knowledge of such magnitude, advanced astronomy, forgotten sciences, perhaps even the origins of humankind, would be considered dangerous in the wrong hands. Myths suggest these archives were sealed not merely with stone, but with curses, guardians, or mechanisms designed to destroy the contents if disturbed. Even without mysticism, the desert itself is a perfect guard. The sands shift endlessly, erasing landmarks, concealing entrances, collapsing corridors. A chamber buried beneath the Sahara might never be rediscovered unless by chance or by technologies not yet applied. Ground-penetrating radar has revealed traces of lost cities beneath dunes, but to map an distant entire continent would take centuries. And so the treasures sleep, untouched, their existence reduced to whispers. There is something haunting about the idea of a library sealed beneath the sand. Imagine it, a chamber lit by torches thousands of years ago, scrolls carefully stacked, tablets lined on shelves, their inscriptions fresh and legible. A group of priests or sages closing the entrance, knowing they would never return. Outside, storms gather, civilizations fall, empires vanish, the world forgets. And beneath it all, the knowledge waits in silence, wrapped in darkness, untouched by time. To think that such a place may still exist is to feel the thinness of the present. Our world, with all its certainty and arrogance, may simply be another chapter layered upon deeper stories hidden just out of sight. We live atop a palimpsest, the desert's surface concealing an archive that could rewrite everything we believe about history. Of course, archaeologists warn against wishful thinking. The Hall of Records remains unproven. The Golden Library of the Andes has never been authenticated, and the voids beneath the Sphinx may be nothing more than natural cracks. Skepticism is a necessary guardrail. And yet, myth is rarely born from nothing. Again and again, cultures separated by oceans and time speak of archives preserved for the future. Perhaps the stories exaggerate. Perhaps the libraries are not vast halls, but hidden caches, a chamber of scrolls here, a room of tablets there. But even a single discovery could transform our understanding of the ancient world. What if beneath the desert lies proof that advanced civilizations flourished long before we are taught? What if beneath the sands of Egypt or Mauritania there waits a history that stretches back into the mists of the pre-flood world? For now, the desert holds its silence. The wind scours the dunes, the stars blaze above, and beneath that vast emptiness something stirs, or perhaps nothing at all. The very uncertainty is what makes it irresistible. The idea that, buried under sand, there could be a library that knows who we were, where we came from, and why we are here. To imagine such a library is to feel both awe and sorrow. Awe at the immensity of the possible, sorrow at the fragility of our memory. Civilizations rise and fall, but perhaps their wisdom does not vanish entirely. Perhaps it is still here, beneath our feet, waiting for the day when we are ready to read it. And so the desert keeps its secrets. The library may be myth, or it may be the most important discovery never made. Until the sand yields, all we have are the whispers and the silence